Gotcha.
I don't know. So, but I had my textbook, I had your packet, and I had my.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Cook. I'm the Assistant City Manager with the City of Sturgis. I want to welcome everyone joining us via YouTube and the teleconference to this rural transmission open house presentation. We're meeting virtually tonight due to Michigan's COVID-19 restrictions that prevent in-person meetings. I want to thank everyone who was able to join us and listen to this presentation. Digital recording of the presentation will be available on the city's YouTube channel, which can be accessed by going to sturgismi.gov/YouTube. That'll redirect you to our YouTube channel, or using the link on the city's homepage at sturgismi.gov. Both of those links should be up and active within the next couple of days. The redirect from sturgismi.gov/YouTube hopefully should be up and running tonight. The presentation will also be available for viewing directly on our electric department webpage at sturgismi.gov/utilities/electric. Again, that should be up in the next couple of days. With that, I will turn it over to John Griffith, our electric department superintendent for the city of Sturgis.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And again, I'd like to echo your comments about thanking everyone for joining us online. So your time is appreciated. Just a real brief overview of what we're up to and why. We currently have a sub-transmission line that runs from the city of Sturgis out to the hydro plant. And we've been wanting to upgrade this line for a number of years for several reasons. One is reliability. I want to improve that dramatically with this project. Another goal is to increase the resiliency, which gets down to how quickly we can restore it when we do have an issue. We have some performance issues when it comes to voltage, and also long-term looking at making sure we have enough capacity to continue to serve the customers, particularly out closer to the Schimmel Road corridor and on north through the village of Centerville. So with that, I would again echo the thanks. Appreciate your time and thank you for joining us. And there are several people to thank. If we can maybe get to the next slide. Thank you. Michael Hughes is the city manager who's been instrumental with the project. Josh Shakowski is our electric operations manager and has been assisting with the project. Michael McGeehan is the project engineer for line design and will do some construction management once the project kicks off. Mark Lane and Deborah Wheeler for contract land staff, who will help us with rights of way and easements as the project progresses. So with that, I will surrender my time and let you take over, Mark Lane.
I'm sorry, I think I was muted. Can you all hear me?
We can now, Mark.
Perfect, perfect. So what I'll do is I'll start with a basic project description, the overall scope of the project, and kind of the building blocks of why we're doing this. Basically, the overall scope of the project is to upgrade and modernize the electrical infrastructure to provide increased capacity as well as reliable power supply to the customers of the city of Sturgis. This proposed project is approximately 6 miles in length. We are proposing a single circuit 69 kilovolt transmission line. Um, Along with this transmission line project, there will also be a new substation being built north of Bulk and Featherstone intersection, connecting to an existing substation located on North Centerville Road near downtown Sturgis. The easement will approximately be 60 feet wide or 30 feet from the center line of the poles, and those poles or structures will be approximately anywhere from 80 to 100 feet tall, um, either made of steel or wood material. Proposed project schedule for this transmission project. Uh, Community dialogue has been ongoing now for quite some time. It's been a pleasure working with John and the city and in working through this project in a step-by-step process. Route selection and permit preparation again started back in October 2018. Hopefully, we will have that finalized with permits in April of 2021. This open house is taking place December of 2020. Survey and engineering. Hopefully, we can hit the ground running right away. Start with survey and engineering in the winter of 2020 through the spring of 2021. Right away acquisition starting as soon as we can. Hopefully, by February 2021 through the middle of summer 2021, July 2021, with potentially construction starting as early as October 2021 and being completed by the end of winter in March 2022, with the potential in-service time frame of spring of 2022. The benefits of this project, why are we doing this and how we are going to get it done. The why, the current infrastructure has reached an age where it just absolutely needs to be replaced to better serve the customers of the city of Sturgis. Enhancements are needed to improve the reliability of the electric grid in the area. Building a new and upgrading existing infrastructure addresses performance issues and improves the area's overall condition. Increased capacity and reliability allows for future expansion and development within the community. Improvements reduce the possibility of power outages and will speed up restoration efforts in the case that there is one. And then overall reliability and stability of the electric grid are beneficial for not only the residential communities, but also commercial and industrial customers as well. And then how we are going to get to that point. Our goal is to build a new 69 kV electric transmission line from an existing substation on Centerville Road to a new rural substation near Bulk and Featherstone intersection, just north of that intersection on the east side. Uh, our goal is to minimize landowner impact by utilizing public rights of way where applicable. And I believe when we get to later on in the presentation and start discussing the routes that we vetted, we'll very much explain why we have a preferred route. The design near public rights of way allow for easy access for future maintenance to this line, not only for construction uh, during the construction of the actual transmission project itself, and also will minimize vegetation removal that's required to construct this transmission line. And then the transmission grid is the backbone of the electric network and ensures reliability service for the region. Upgrading the line is essential to strengthen the system, increase stability, and just overall improve resiliency of the system. Um, Discussing the routes that we've vetted, we've spent hundreds of hours vetting different routes and really trying to iron out the best possible option for not only the city but its customers. And I believe after the presentation this evening, I believe you'll agree that we've done that. So the first route that I'll discuss, and this map was also a part of the mail out that we had sent to all affected stakeholders on all of these route options, as well as our preferred route option. The first route I'll discuss is the Featherstone to Centerville. The landowner impact was very great, and based on our initial open house that we held back in 2018, it was very apparent that the landowner impact was very great. And due to the residential nature of that route, there were many more landowners affected on that route than all of our other routes. It also runs through the residential area near the lake, which posed many other spatial issues with the vicinity to dwellings. Um, the second route option I'll discuss is the Featherstone to Taylor, down to Mintdale, and then over to Centerville. Um, that's kind of is where the existing 24 kV line primarily runs. It's kind of off the beaten path a little bit, and that line is from the 1900s and is needing to be replaced. Um, the limited access and terrain through that area would not be a good or positive selection for the city or the customers or the cost of the project to attempt to rebuild on that existing center line. The Featherstone to Mintdale to Centerville, which is just a little bit further east, kind of a straight shot south of Featherstone, down to Mintdale and kind of following that existing route. Um, Again, very limited access for constructability and future maintenance. Cuts cross country, significant vegetation removal would be required, and just not the best route option for us to take. Um, and then we had a bulk down to Schrader over to Centerville. And this is kind of a hybrid route that follows partially along our preferred route, but we wanted a second option, and just to make sure that our preferred route was indeed our preferred route. And really, when we cut across, some agricultural parcels kind of off the beaten path, future access and constructability access is very slim through that area, um, which all points to the direction of why we selected our preferred route, which is the blue route shown on your map today, and also included in the mail out that was sent out about a week and a half ago. Essentially, this route starts down Bulk from the new substation location down to Mintdale, um, over to Myers, down to Schrader, and then over to Centerville. Um, Almost all of this route follows existing public rights of ways. Essentially, what that means is there are roads, for the most part, paralleling this whole route. And what that means for constructability and future access and limited impact to landowners is there's already existing public access to most of this route. So constructability is not an issue. Future maintenance is not an issue. There's not going to be additional access that's going to be required to be built for construction or for future maintenance. Um, when we follow public rights of way, the goal is to limit impact to landowners as well. Previously, I'd stated that this line could potentially be a 60-foot wide easement, 30 foot from center line of poles. If we build along public rights of way, what we can do is we can set that center line of poles just outside of public right of way, which essentially means 40% or so of the easement is in public right of way, not impacting your property. And the other 60%, which is limited, would be on your private property. So the impact to the actual private landowners is 40% less than what it would be if we traveled across country not paralleling public rights of way. Um, when we follow public rights of way, it also limits the amount of vegetation removal because part of that, or 40% of that route, could potentially be in the public right of way. Public right of way is already cleared and maintained on a regular basis. This is also by far the most cost effective route to build and to maintain for the future success of this project for the city of Sturgis. The next slide we'll discuss is the overall right-of-way process and what I'll be heavily involved in throughout this project. So we have a plethora of experienced individuals that are on our team that have built hundreds of miles of transmission lines just in Southwest Michigan over the last 5 to 10 years. Um, we've had great success in negotiating with the landowners. We are familiar with the types of terrain that are present and the similar issues that most landowners may have in this area of Southwest Michigan. Um, Starting from the very beginning of right-of-way activities, after we select our route, the first step is to survey. And our right-of-way professionals will reach out to each landowner on an individual basis and discuss the specifics and particulars of your property and your concerns. Um, and we will do this on an individual basis so we know your needs are heard and understood. Once the survey process takes place, they'll collect boundary data. They'll survey the proposed location of the easement, and then they'll assist in identifying any potential encroachments or issues that we may not see just driving down the road. Locating any public utilities that may be in the area, pipelines or road crossings, railroad crossings, etc. That's when we really get into a fine-tooth comb and identifying some of those issues that you may already know as the landowner of that property that we won't understand quite yet. Once we've identified all those issues and we've vetted through those issues, we'll start into easement negotiations. That's where we sit down and discuss the easement rights that the city is looking for to be able to build this transmission line. Once all of our easements are acquired, we will move into construction activities, which the landowners will be notified well ahead of time, and we will do everything we can to minimize impact during the construction process and make sure you're very much educated on the front end on what to expect during that construction process. And then finally, once the project is complete, we'll come back through with restoration activities, ensure that seed is taking in your lawn, everything is cleaned up and back to restored to what it was before the transmission line came through. And now I will hand the presentation over to Michael McGeehan, who is our project engineer, and he will discuss the environmental impacts of a project.
Thank you, Mark. A pleasure to be able to present this evening on our portion of working with the City of Sturgis and contract land staff on this transmission line project. As Mark mentioned, our responsibility is the design of the transmission line, and with that to manage and ensure that all the necessary permits are in place and that we look at all of the factors and impacts of this line. Obviously, environmental impacts are extremely important, and with the majority of utility construction projects that occur, there can be impacts to the environment that do happen. So early on in the pre-construction time of the project, it is our responsibility with the team to identify what those potential impacts may be, to work with governmental agencies and interested and impacted parties to determine what will that impact be and how we can mitigate those impacts either through design changes, construction opportunities that can certainly mitigate, or if we can even eliminate impacts through the construction process. So what does occur during that pre-construction time is professionals are brought in to perform the necessary inventories. Those include items such as wetland delineation, determining if there are threatened and endangered species habitats along the route, if there are archaeological or historical sites, if there may be any navigable waterways along the route. So all of that work is done through field inventory, through going through documentation, historical documentation, and again, working with all of the governmental agencies that are responsible to issue the necessary permits for construction. So we bring all of those items and all of those environmental impacts into our design. We make sure, again, that we design around those and mitigate any impacts where we can. Once we get to the construction phase, certainly this is very, very important to protect and monitor throughout the construction process all of those identified items. Again, if there is habitat that we don't want to impact, maybe so that might be time of year that we are doing vegetation work, or maybe we're utilizing matting systems or other methods to not impact wetland areas. So any state or governmental agency mandated measures will get put in, and we will use those processes throughout the construction process to mitigate and to do any unnecessary impact to the environment. This also includes, again, as we have delineated the wetland areas, to make sure that construction contractors are putting in any erosion control devices to ensure that the integrity of the wetland areas are upheld. And once construction is complete, to make sure that restoration is done. Because again, certainly the construction process will impact the environment. We try, as I said, to limit that, but any impact that may have been done is to ensure in the post-construction phase that all the site restoration is done to return the areas to as natural and a pre-construction state that we can. So these, again, these impacts of utility construction projects such as this transmission line are very important to go through and make sure those impacts are mitigated, and we are conscientious of that from the pre-construction process all the way through post-construction.
Thank you, Michael. That was wonderful.
Mark, I think you'll take the next slide. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Michael. The next thing we'll discuss is forestry. So part of and the reason why we have a preferred route is for the most part that preferred route again follows public right of way. A lot of times public right of way or even adjacent to public right of way is very much maintained. Um, what this allows us to do is if we build along these public right of way, there's very limited vegetation removal required, which minimizes impact to our landowners and our customers. Um, so I just want to talk about some of the processes of our forestry team and our vegetation management team, who those individuals are going to be. Um, and Plant Growth Management Systems is a contractor that the city of Sturgis has used for quite some time in maintaining their existing infrastructure and also for this upcoming project. Uh, Unfortunately, they couldn't be with us this evening. They had prior commitments, but I will go ahead and kind of explain their process in their stead and hopefully do them justice. So during the pre-construction process, uh, Plant Growth Management Systems is going to reach out and contact, along with our right-of-way folks, uh, all the affected property owners that may require vegetation removal. And part of this process is also during our survey and preliminary processes, we'll walk the properties and identify any potential vegetation, whether that's undergrowth, bushes, etc., that may pose issues for constructability or mature vegetation that could pose a potential risk to the electric infrastructure. And what we do is we walk through and identify those, and we mark them in a certain manner, whether it needs to be trimmed or removed. Um, we'll mark all of that on the front end, so the landowner is very much aware of what our anticipation is going to be when it comes to vegetation management. Um, Identifying tree removals, tree trimmings, undergrowth vegetation. A lot of times we get this a lot. There are certain trees planted for family members. We look at potential alternative solutions instead of removing and cutting down those trees if it's possible, maybe moving them or transplanting them or spading them. But we'll clearly mark all vegetation to be removed, trimmed to include brush and low-lying vegetation. So there is no questions or concerns by the time negotiations roll around. We know exactly what to expect as far as vegetation management is concerned. And then on top of that, we identify the most effective way to remove that vegetation. If it's a very flat and navigable area, mechanical clearing may be a possibility. If it's not, or could be potentially an environmentally sensitive area, hand or manual clearing may be our only option, which is essentially, your machine clearing or mechanical clearing is the picture on the top, um, and the manual clearing is the picture on the bottom. You'd see individuals either climbing trees or using a bucket truck to do some trimmings, removing trees by hand, which is much more of a painstaking process. Um, During construction, trees that have been identified to be trimmed, all brush will be removed, and any wood over 3 inches in diameter will be cut into manageable pieces and left at the base of the tree. So when we negotiate our easements, the vegetation that's on the property is still owned by the landowner. We're just acquiring the rights to remove it or to remove it or cut it down. A lot of times landowners want to keep this, especially in more rural areas. A lot of individuals will use this wood to dry out and use for firewood in the future. I've had some landowners request to keep, logs of trees at least 8 feet in length so they can cut them into board feet or trimmings or many other opportunities that landowners can utilize them for. Fortunately, as we follow public right of way on our preferred route, there is very limited tree removal. Um, Unlike if we were to go cross country and have to cut a 60-foot swath through a heavily forested area. Um, if a tree is identified to be removed, it will be removed with no more than 3 inches of its stump to remain. In some areas, depending on if it's a lawn care type situation, there may be some additional things we can do there. But standard is 3 inches above grade. And then stumps that are removed and removed vegetation will be treated to prevent future growth. And this really helps us to maintain a clean and clear right of way for our electric infrastructure and also cuts down on future maintenance requirements and disturbances to your property as vegetation may start to regrow in the easement area. And then, of course, finally, with post construction, once the line is built, the areas are restored. We just want to make sure that we'll come through, make sure the process was completed properly. We'll coordinate with our field crews to ensure the right of way is treated properly, to limit that future growth, and to make sure that debris and everything is kind of cleaned up and maintained as is, or what it was prior to the construction of the actual project itself. And with that, I will pass it back over to Michael McGeehan with GRP Engineering to discuss the engineering aspects of this project.
Thank you, Mark. The engineering phase of the project, at this point, we have obviously started into that. Our initial process for a transmission line project is route selection. That is where we're at, as Mark showed in the opening slides. It is something that we have been working with the City of Sturgis and contract land staff on for a number of years at this point. Very critical, very important step as we find that preferred route and move that into the site survey and then the design phase. So the route selection, making sure that we are picking the best route for the transmission line, is where we are continuing to work today. Now, the process that we show here with the bullet items in the slides, a number of these items actually occur concurrently and are not just something that happens step by step. There are a number of portions of the process that we will do even early on in the route selection. But as the route is selected, the next step for us to move into will be into the topographic and LiDAR surveys of the route and the data collection. A lot of the data collection, again, that steps back to the environmental portion that I was speaking on a couple of minutes ago, doing the wetland delineation, looking at any archaeological and historical sites, gathering all of that data that we need along the route, along with the topographic survey, which is going to tell us where any structures are, existing utilities, roads, driveways, et cetera, so that as we move into the actual design phase, we have all of that information available to our designers as we move into selecting where the structures are going to be, what their heights are going to be, and what the material is going to be made of. In conjunction with that, we do the evaluations and we study to determine what are the best types of structures. Are we going to use wood structures or steel structures? Will they be a guide with anchors to hold the structures at angle points, or will we put in concrete foundations and steel poles so that they're self-supporting steel poles? So all of those evaluations are done. We look at that from a cost benefit standpoint. And again, that, cost and benefit to both the City of Sturgis and the landowners, as we determine if there will be anchoring that is required or if we're going to put in a concrete foundation. As we finalize getting through all of those evaluations and again have all the data collected, we move into doing our engineering design drawings and the maps. And this is the stage where all of that work comes together and we start to produce what we call plan and profile drawings, showing the plan of where structures are going to be placed and what the profile of this line will look at. How tall will the structures be? How high off of the ground will the conductors be? And what will they look at under different temperature and loading conditions? And then all of the construction drawings that are required for a contractor to come in and build the line based on the design that we have agreed upon and completed from the engineering side. Once all that design is done, we move into writing the final specifications for the materials and equipment. And again, as I said, a number of these processes are occurring concurrently, so that material and equipment selection is, as I stated, is going on during both the evaluation phase, the design phase. We don't wait till we get all the way to writing the specs to know what those materials are going to be. And those materials, again, the pole or structure material may change along the length of the line. Angle poles may be a different material than a straight or tangent structure along the side of the road. Once all those specifications are written and all the material and equipment is being procured, we then move into the final construction planning and specification phase. And this is where specifications are written and bid documents are prepared to send out to select a contractor, and a work plan is put into place so that not only the contractor and city know, but any of the stakeholders, in other words, any of those property owners that the line is going to impact, will understand what the construction process will be, how poles may be set in the ground, how access will be made to cross a property, will matting need to be placed on the ground to protect the wetlands. So that whole work plan is put together, prepared, along with the construction specifications, and then competitively bid out to select a construction contractor. What are some of the codes and standards that we utilize in the design and engineering process for transmission lines? The National Electrical Safety Code, the NESC, is the document that we use in the utility industry to ensure that the line is designed to the proper strength and height and clearances are maintained. One of the other standards that we base our design on is the Rural Utilities Service, the governmental agency that is again, it's a nationally recognized design and construction standards. So we start with that and then only design even tighter than what that standard may be for a very conservative approach to our engineering and design process. And then some of the site-specific considerations that are taken into account as we do our engineering design. How do we select where the structures are going to land? How tall do they need to be? Where are angles going to have to be placed? Again, some of those items that come into play, what is the width of the easement? Maybe there's an encroachment into the easement, an encroachment maybe being a physical structure, a building or something that may present itself to a place where we have to put a structure in a different location. Are there road crossings? Are there railroad crossings? Are we crossing other utility lines? That's going to determine the height that we need for poles and for conductors. Are there FAA restrictions as far as what the height may be? Do we have stream or river crossings that we need to, again, select where that structure is going to be so we are far enough away from stream and river areas and wetland areas? And what are the foundations and anchoring requirements, which I touched on a moment ago? Do we place an anchor to hold up a structure that has an angle on it? Or do we put in a concrete foundation? That type of foundation is shown on the top of this slide. There are pictures of that type of drill pier foundation. So all of these considerations come into play, along with a number of others, work into the engineering and design process. And again, taking into account all of the codes and the standards that are required for a 69 kV transmission line. To us, this is the exciting time to bring all of these things together and ensure that we design and prepare a construction plan to meet all of the necessary requirements to successfully build a transmission line. And from that, then, Mark, if you want to move into discussing feedback on this project.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. So a week and a half to 2 weeks ago, we'd sent a letter out to all of our stakeholders on every route that we vetted, essentially asking for public feedback. We offered a few different avenues to communicate to us, one of them being to mail in a letter regarding the rural transmission line project. We also included an email address and then also a local phone number for voicemails to be left on, just to give many avenues of communication back to our project team, and hopes to put together answers for you based on those questions provided. Uh, so these are a few of the questions that we reviewed and received from our stakeholders, from our customers and our landowners, that we just put some answers to. We would like to share that information with you on this portion, this last portion of the presentation. Um, so, is the proposed substation location on the mail-out map the only option? So, on the very north end, Bulk Road, Featherstone, north of that intersection, there was a proposed substation location. That substation and that property was purchased by the city of Sturgis in 2010. That will, in fact, be our new substation location. What are the benefits of utilizing a new transmission route rather than utilizing an existing transmission route? So, a lot of the feedback we received was, why are we building in a new location if there's already an existing transmission line present? There's a few reasons why. I know I touched base on a couple of those already, but I'll just kind of reiterate those now. The existing transmission line that was shown on the map was built in the early 1900s, 1902, 1904, right around that time frame. So at this point in time, it's somewhere around 115 years old. And that transmission line currently runs at 24.9 kilovolts. The nature of a cross-country design, like that line was designed, um, does not provide the most advantageous location to build a modern type transmission line. The preferred route follows existing public right-of-way, and allowing easy access, limited landowner impact, and also minimal vegetation removal. So those are a couple of aspects on why we do not want to rebuild the existing 24.9 kilovolt transmission line, and we will be building a new 69 kV transmission line to a modern style to follow the existing public rights of way to minimize that impact for our landowners and for our customers, as well as minimizing costs to build this transmission line. Uh, will a new easement devalue our property? So utility easements generally do not affect value of property unless it imposes tight restrictions on what the property owner may do or may not do. Our goal with the preferred route is to utilize a large portion of adjacent road right of way to minimize impact. An example would be as follows: 60-foot wide easement, 30-foot from center line of the poles, could potentially overhang public right of way 25 feet, only requiring 35 feet of easement on private property. Most local ordinances require at least a 35-foot frontage setback for future development. Um, this will minimize impact to landowners, allow for public access to the easement areas for construction and future maintenance, and be the least encumbering option. So the point of that is we will negotiate in good faith, and there will be a fair market value assessment done for any easements granted to the city of Sturgis. Um, but at the same time, we're going to be encumbering an area where there could be no potential for future development anyway. Um, a lot of times in some locations, it may be even 50 feet in a required setback, and that's zoning case by case basis, and we can discuss that on a case by case basis with landowners if they're interested in that sort of information. But that is why we designed and vetted the routes that we did, and we have a preferred route um, as shown on the map previously. Can you identify which side of Mintdale the preferred route is on? I can. So our preferred route currently runs on the south side of Mintdale, all the way over to Bulk, crosses Bulk, and then runs north. And by the time we get north of that little curvature there on Bulk, it will be on the east side um, of the roadway. So I know that map isn't really zoomed in, and it could be um, maybe confusing, but it does run on the south side of Mintdale. Will trees in my yard need to be removed? So the first step of this process, as we discussed a little bit earlier, will be to communicate with landowners and obtain survey permissions to analyze the preferred route in more detail. This is that fine-tooth comb. We come out and locate, vegetation, underground utilities that we may not be able to locate unless we have access to your property. We talk to the landowners and we ask them about, utilities they may be aware of, or maybe a septic system, or a well, or a water line, or a fiber line, or something along those lines. The landowner always knows their property better than we will. So we want to communicate with you and make this a group effort to identify these potential issues so we can vet the route in as much detail as possible. When can we expect to be provided information regarding the easement? So based on our current proposed schedule, we hope to begin easement negotiations in sometime around spring of 2021. Um, the survey portion will absolutely come first. There will be some title work that has to be done to identify the vested ownership of each property. Um, Once the title work is complete, exhibits will then be created to identify what the proposed easement will look like, and then we can begin our easement negotiations. So will we still have use of our easement area on our properties? So the answer is yes. Under normal circumstances, you're allowed to utilize the easement area as intended with a few restrictions. And those restrictions are always called out in the easement agreement. Some of those restrictions may be to not be able to build a permanent structure inside the easement area, or not planting any trees or growing vegetation in the easement area. And the reason that we do this is when we design this transmission line, as Michael stated earlier, we have to follow NESC clearances. There are engineering guidelines for safety that we must follow. So if we design a transmission line and build it based on what's currently there, and then a landowner builds maybe a shed or a garage inside of that easement, now they're negating those clearances that we built to maintain. So maybe there's a horizontal or vertical clearance that we're required to maintain. If you build a permanent structure in the easement, now you're mitigating and violating those clearances. So part of the negotiations and in the easement language prevents permanent structures being built in the right of way. Similar as vegetation. You may plant a sapling that may be 2 or 3 feet tall, but in 15, 20 years, it may be 15 feet tall. And at that point, you could be violating our NESC clearances, which is why we acquire an easement to build these transmission lines. Usually access drives, um, crops, things of those nature, there are little to no limitations for, and that's on a case by case basis based on the easement language, and we'll discuss that when we start negotiating the easements. Will this transmission line affect cell reception or TV antenna reception? So there should be no negative impact to cellular reception from this transmission line. Oftentimes, Michael and I have discussed this, that cell companies will co-locate and place their cell antennas onto our transmission structures. So that's something that happens on a regular basis. So very there should be no impact whatsoever. How will construction activities affect my livestock, animals, and/or crops? So landowners will be notified well before construction activities begin. And safety is always our number one concern. So that's the thing that we push the most is safety. So communication is key to safety. So during our easement negotiations, we best discuss any particulars about your property that will be necessary to account for prior to construction activities commencing, whether that's livestock or crops, harvesting, pets, children, whatever the case may be. Um, Temporary fencing has been utilized or relocation of livestock during this process. Um, and we identified that if we do, disturb crops, crop damages will be paid. Now, if we acquire a 60-foot easement, we may not use all 60 feet during construction activities. So what we'll do is we'll wait until we know construction activities are completed. We'll take an assessment of the area that has been damaged, and we'll pick construction damages accordingly. Once all damages have been identified. And then the last thing that was brought up was um, apparently the county is planning on replacing the Schrader Road east from Myers Road all the way to Centerville in the spring of 2021. How will this affect the project? So as any project, the city and GRP Engineering and Michael and CLS will work very closely with all of our local entities. DOT if necessary, the county road commissions, the local townships, whatever permitting entities that are affected or impacted by the project are a stakeholder in the project just as much as a landowner would be. So we communicate with them from the very beginning. So we have, very, very well set ahead of time expectations of what they will require, what we anticipate, and for schedule, and then we work together to make sure both schedules, work seemingly without impact. So at this point in time, if the work is going to be in spring of 2021, we do not believe that this is going to impact, or our project will not impact the road work uh, that was brought up in the question. Now, that doesn't mean additional road work may not happen in the future. And again, that's why we communicate on a regular basis with other stakeholders or permitting entities that are affected by the project. Um, with that, just kind of closing comments and closing statements. Um, we have very well trained professionals that we're working directly with property owners and people in the communities along the route to learn more about their interests and priorities. Our land agents are contacting property owners along the route to ask permission to conduct surveys which are necessary for engineering and permitting. And then our community dialogue team will be working to answer questions with the communities through which it will pass. Um, so included in the letter and then also on this presentation are different avenues that we would like for our landowners to utilize to communicate with our project team. Um, we wanted to have many avenues for you to utilize because not one avenue is perfect for one individual. So there is an email address, electricreliability@sturgismi.gov. There is a contact number, a local contact number, the 269-659-6006 number. There's also a mailing address as long as you reference the Sturgis Rural Electric Transmission Project. All of that information will get to our project team. Um, we want your comments and we take them very seriously, and we want to be a part of this project with you and have you be a part of it with us. So we're working as a team to get this done for the city because really it is what's best for the city of Sturgis and its customers. So I will leave this up just for a moment. This meeting is being recorded. It will be available as Andrew had stated in the very beginning, for you to reference back to if necessary, or to pull this contact information. Please continue sending your comments or questions or concerns to us through these avenues. We look forward to hearing from you, and we thank you for participating.